This is Jim Casey and Mark Douglas speaking about simplifying the pathway, clarifying educational service provision for children who are deaf and hard of hearing. Thank you. Just that right arrow to go next slide.
Thank you. My name is Mark Douglas and I am the practice leader for services deaf and hard of hearing for the Ministry of Education, and Jim Casey, regional coordinator from Kelston Deaf Education Centre. What we want to do is just give you a little bit of an update of some changes that have happened in deaf education in terms of service provision that have happened over the last 3 years. So it's just really for those of you that are involved with advisors on deaf children and with the deaf education centres, just to give you a bit of an update as to what's happening in that area. So in 2011 there was a review of deaf education, and out of that came the Ross Wilson report, and the Ross Wilson report really just provided 12 recommendations in terms of services to children who are deaf and hard of hearing, really across the sector. It was really an opportunity to look at the service provision that was coming from advisors on deaf children and from the deaf education centres and also the cochlear implant programs. And Ross came up with 12 recommendations, and the main thrust of those recommendations was that there needed to be a greater focus in service provision for children in the early years. And he was really recommending that for the Ministry of Education. At the time, the Ministry of Education advisors on deaf children worked with children from birth right through to end of school, and he was indicating that maybe there needed to be a shift to early years in terms of birth to 5 years of age. So we about 3 years ago, actually 4 years ago now, I was seconded to look at those recommendations and to determine which ones we would implement and which ones we wouldn't. And that involved quite a lot of collaboration with the deaf education centres. The main thrust of the change for us was to shift our focus to an early years focus and to deploy the services for older students across to the two deaf education centres, being Kelston Deaf Education Centre and Van Ash Deaf Education Centre. We started that process with a trial in the Waikato and Hawke's Bay, and Jim will talk to that later on. But that trial was successful, and we've moved on since then. I'm not sure if you're aware of a document called the National Plan for Education of Deaf and Hearing Impaired Children, Young People in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It really sets out a number of principles around services for children who are deaf and hard of hearing. And there were 3 key principles that we took from that were guiding for us in terms of the changes we were about to trial and implement. Really, number 3 is the one that I've sort of felt we were focusing on most, and that was to develop an equitable and cohesive service coordinated for all children and students deaf and hard of hearing, and providing in a timely manner from birth right through to end of school. So it was really looking at national delivery across the country, what we were doing well, what we could do better, and in terms of responding to the Wilson report. We really wanted to look at services that were early, that were effective and were coordinated. There were 3 main service providers, as I've already stated, the Ministry and the 2 deaf education centres, and the cochlear implant programs as well. So there needed to be some way of ensuring we were reducing the gaps that may have existed or for some time, and also look at any overlaps and see what we could do that was more efficient and more coordinated. The main thrust really was to make most of the opportunity of newborn hearing screening, and for the advisors on deaf children to allow more capacity in that area and build capability around our services in that area as well. There's also a need to look at the transition from ourselves across to the deaf education centres, and that's what we've done over the last 3 years. So, just a summary of the changes that we've put in place. So the first bullet point there I've already spoken to. The second bullet point talks about deploying services for children year 4 at school, year 4 to year 13, across to the 2 deaf education centres. So the early years focus and definition was really not birth to 5, we took it as birth to year 3 at school. So we were able to look at the transition into school and ensure that the children were settled before that transition took place across to the deaf education centres. Not sure if people are aware of the funding that exists in deaf education in terms of targeted funding for students who are deaf and hard of hearing. There's a targeted funding called the Ongoing Resourcing Scheme, which is the ORS or ORS as it sits up there. So the shift of responsibility for the year 4 plus students that we were deploying across to the DECs was really targeting those non-ORS verified, so the students that didn't have targeted funding, across to Kelston and to Van Ash Deaf Education Centre. What we then looked at were the ORS verified students, so those students that had targeted funding from the time they started school right through to the end of school, through the Ongoing Resourcing Scheme. And in collaboration and discussion with the DECs, we asked them to take a leadership role, which in some districts they were already doing, but to take a leadership role and greater responsibility for those students moving forward. So something that's probably more relevant to audiologists, just up here, is in terms of new referrals. So under this new way of working, all new referrals from birth to year 3 are the responsibility now of the Ministry of Education, and all new referrals for children year 4 plus will be the responsibility of the 2 deaf education centres. So those will be referrals coming through from audiology, also including re-referrals for children that have previously been identified with hearing loss. There's a note there, and this, which is quite important, is that all referrals in the first instance still come to the Ministry of Education. So there's no change there. We deal with it at our end. If we see that the child is a year 4 student, then we forward those referrals straight on to the 2 deaf education centres. In terms of assistive technology, and we're really talking about technology around FMs and DMs and RMs in this area, the MRE retains responsibility for assistive technology for students birth to year 3 at school, and the DECs pick up that responsibility from year 4 onwards. Jim.
Thanks, Mark. Jim Casey, and I'm representing both the deaf education centres, Kelston Deaf Education Centre and Van Ash. And you may not know, but we have a single board now. Both schools come under one board, which has made things a lot easier in terms of communication. So this program we're calling Assist, the work that we're doing, we're calling the Assist program. We did have mainstream education support structure, that came out as a mess. We thought that's probably not a good way to start. So we've gone with Assist, and the main focus of Assist is to really support schools in developing good practices for kids with hearing loss. The 2 areas that Mark mentioned, Waikato and Hawke's Bay, were the 2 areas that were first rolled out, and they were chosen because of their connection to newborn hearing screening programs. And one on the right, thank you. The main outcomes over 6 months, a year, was that we saw increased services to children in year 4 plus, which was fantastic, but we also saw increased services to those children in the newborn hearing screening and in the early years. So that was the main thrust and the main reason for changing the way that services were being administered, and we've seen some really good progress with that. We did put out a surveyed appearance, And again, the parents that returned surveys suggested that they were pleased with the changes and pleased with the service provision. Which is really what that says up there. Quite a bit of work has to go on with the team that is working in this area, a fair bit of professional development, and it also aligns with the Board of Trustees' key goals, which is to keep a national database of all the kids that we find with hearing loss. So we're working hard to collect data and to look at the outcomes for those kids. So we're still working our way through the process of how we're going to assess children at what ages, but we're trying to align that with what's currently existing within the cochlear implant programs and within the ministry itself. So stage 2 was an expansion into the Bay of Plenty regions, into Taranaki and into Christchurch. And again, good results, good outcomes, lots of work with both sectors, both with the Ministry of Education in terms of the Advisors on Deaf Children and in terms of the work that was carried out by the ASSIST team. And stage 3 is the rest of the country. So I think that that's 40% that has been covered by the program. So 60% to roll out, Northland and Auckland and the rest of the South Island, Wellington region, quite big areas and quite diverse in terms of the population. And again, part of what we're doing is collecting the data, making sure that we're seeing as many children as we possibly can and looking at their needs, and also comparing the needs of those children that are currently out there without support, and looking at the needs of the children that we've got on Resource Teachers of the Deaf caseload, etc. So that's a big piece of work, and we've got a goal to report back to our Board of Trustees on the numbers and the needs out there by the end of the year. So a fair bit to get through. As Mark said, a simplified pathway. It's still a little bit complicated, but the Advisor on Deaf Children working right through to children that are around about 8 years of age, that's the end of their year 3 in school, and Kelston and Van Ash working with children probably as young as 3, so those children that we're seeing with quite significant needs as young as 3, and moving right through to the end of the school sector. So there's a good crossover. We see that period from 3 through to the year 3 in school is a good opportunity to make sure that we transition the services and transition and certainly look at the needs of those children in terms of their ongoing support. So Mark, back to you, I think.
So just a little bit of sort of information around the process, around how we've rolled this out. As Jim has already said, we ran a pilot in the Waikato and Hawke's Bay and then rolled out to 4 other Ministry of Education districts. And we're currently looking at rolling out to the remaining 10 districts across the country. And that starts in term 3 of this year. That's the school term, which is around July 20th, I think. And we're rolling out basically to those districts that we haven't rolled out to prior to that. When we do this rollout, the transition time takes usually a good 2 months, actually 2 to 3 months, because it's not like we pick a date and say, right, hand that work over to the deaf education centres and say that's yours and we back away. It's very much a collaborative process, so those transitions for some families and some students may take longer, depending if there's some work that needs to be completed. Some are a little bit shorter. One of the spin-offs from this work is that in each district we have what we call monthly meetings at a local level between the Ministry of Education and those at the local level, and Jim's, as said, the ASSIST team, and we look at just how the transition's going, and in those districts where the transition has already occurred, any other issues that have come up, and it's really strengthened the relationship between the Ministry of Education and the 2 deaf education centres. And I would say it's also an opportunity for audiologists, if you're connected up with Advisors on Deaf Children or with the ASSIST team going forward, be good to get to have some knowledge of when those monthly meetings are, if you ever wanted to be part of that process, because we'd certainly welcome that input as well. So it's been really important that we've developed local processes, and we've developed guidelines around this work. It's called a model of service, and the guidelines sort of outlines what responsibility sits with the Ministry of Education, what responsibility sits with the Deaf Education Centres. Those guidelines cover about 80% of situations, and there's another 20% that will come up, and we know that we just have to have common sense around those situations and work collaboratively with the Deaf Education Centres and with the Ministry of Education to find a solution. So an example of that would have been when we rolled out into the Waikato. There was a child up the top of Coromandel. He was an older student, so the expectation from the guidelines were that the Deaf Education Centres would pick up that work. They didn't have the ability to get up there at that time, so we just picked up that work, and that would happen until we could pass it back across to them. So the work can slide backwards and forwards. The idea is that we are reducing those gaps, and that families will receive a service, whether it's from the Ministry or from the Deaf Education Centres. Another spin-off is that in each district we've developed what we call a shared spreadsheet. So and on that spreadsheet we have all students that we are currently working with, we being the Ministry of Education, and all students that the Deaf Education Centres are currently working with. And we keep track of those students moving forward. And once we've rolled out to the last 10 districts, we will then have a national spreadsheet covering all students actively across the country. And that works towards, as Jim said, the Board of Trustees' goal for the 2 Deaf Education Centres to develop a national database. So what we've done is, in the terms of the process, we've met with different audiology departments across the country, and I see some faces that I've met with as we've rolled this out. Just to give people a bit of an update on what it is we're trying to do and the changes that we're putting in place. We've tried to develop a nationally consistent referral form. Previously there were a number of referral forms that existed in the Ministry. Even sometimes consistency is a little bit difficult to maintain. But we've tried to develop we have developed these new referral forms, and we've given those out to different audiology departments across the country. And there's a little piece on that referral form which I'll come to in just a moment. What's really important for us, for those new referrals that come through, is to have some information around where the child is at school. We do need an attached audiogram and report for that child, so that if that referral and those referrals all come through to the Ministry of Education, we can just pass that information on to the 2 Deaf Education Centres. And for those referrals for children birth to year 3, we also really do require that information. It just makes our job a little bit easier when we first engage with families. As I said before, that's the most important part. No change in terms of where the referrals are sent to. All referrals still come to the Ministry of Education, but just an understanding that if that student is in year 4, that referral will be sent on from us straight through to the Deaf Education Centres. So this is, on the referral form, this is just a paragraph we've put at the bottom of the referral form. So if you just take a few moments just to read through that, what it does do is just give the families an indication that if this child is an older student, that will be sent on to the Deaf Education Centres, and that we will be sharing information with both Deaf Education Centres. So if you are identifying new children with hearing loss, if you could bring that paragraph to the attention of the families when you're seeking approval to refer through to us, that would be incredibly helpful to us. Yes, definitely. Yeah, as long as as you indicate that verbal consent was given, that's fine. Doesn't have to be written consent. Yeah. So, any questions? The extra staff? For the deaf education centres? Okay. What we've done is through this process, as I said before, the idea really was to make most of the opportunity of newborn hearing screening. So by decreasing the numbers of students or children that the advisors work with, it's allowed us to increase our intensity of work. And also we've, as Jim said, there's been funding that has gone from the Ministry of Education to the deaf education centres, which is over and above the existing funding that they were already receiving to set up that assist team. But Jim might want to talk about the numbers.
Yes, we've the Board of Trustees has provided staffing for this work, and this next couple of years, I guess, is going to be the chance for us to have a real good look at the children that are out there, the children that are currently receiving services through the Resource Teachers for the Deaf service, and to have a clear look about the needs across that sector. So that's our first opportunity, really, is to get out and do some triage in terms of the needs. So that's why one of those points up there was about developing local practices with the audiologists. We're really keen to collaborate to make sure that we are identifying students that have got needs in schools, identifying students that have got needs moving forward, newly diagnosed children in the year 4 plus, children with progressive hearing losses, and those children that are not, I suppose, utilising technology to support themselves in the classroom. So, big piece of work. Yes.
Sorry, I've got testing. I work in the Greater Wellington region, and we've got quite a good relationship with the AODCs,
Yes.
and we're looking forward to extending that to the assist staff, so that's exciting. I guess there has been a bit of concern raised that the AODCs have a lot of knowledge with actually managing the hearing aids,
Certainly.
impressions, troubleshooting, things like that, that perhaps the assist or the TODs don't know as much about, or so I'm guessing I'm questioning how are you going to go about providing that upskilling to that staff? Is that something that us as audiologists need to provide information to them about, or is there going to be upskilling coming from their workplaces?
Yes. It's a pretty big question, really. You're talking about making sure that we transfer the knowledge and skills of the advisor of deaf children through to those people that are working in the assist. Currently, we've got 5 people working in that area that have trained as advisors on deaf children. So we've got a certain degree of skill knowledge already out there. And resource teachers of the deaf have been going through the last year through a process of upskilling in terms of their skills. But yes, absolutely, connecting with audiologists in terms of the equipment that are being provided to children, involving the assist team when you are assessing the needs of kiddies is also really important. We are coming across kids where they've been fitted with technology with real no consideration of the environments that they're going into, and I would imagine that might be part of the skill shortage that we need to fill. So we're very, very keen to make sure that we work alongside audiologists to make sure that the equipment, the assessment of the students' needs and the equipment fitted is realistic. Yep. Got a question?
Thank you. I've got 2 questions. I'd like to understand a little more about that question. Which professionals are being employed by the assist team, and what training will they get? Because occasionally there'll be late referrals, and they need the parent guidance skills of advisors.
Yes.
As already raised, they need to know a lot about the technology, etc. My other question relates to a comment you made, Mark, about assistive technology being handled by the assist teams with the older children. But still, do you mean still through the Ministry of Education assistive technology system, or some different funding?
Yeah, that process still runs through the Ministry of Education, so the funding around assistive technology still sits with the Ministry of Education. It's really more talking about the process of new applications for assistive technology or replacements or repairs So that work stays with the ministry from from birth to year 3, and will sit with the Deaf Education Centres year 4 plus. Is that? Yeah.
And more about the training or something, Jim, or the people being employed?
Certainly. As I said, we've got 5 of the current people that have been employed. We've got 23 staff across the area. We've already put in processes of upskilling and looking at some opportunities in terms of ongoing learning. But you're right, Bill, connecting with local audiologists, fitting in with clinics would be really helpful for those people.
What are they called? I mean,
Assist. They are the assist team. So, do you want me to name them, or you?
No. I mean, some of them are drawn. Some of them are teachers of the. Some are teachers of the deaf.
That's
some
right.
are advisors on deaf children.
That's right.
What is the prerequisite? And would someone who is a teacher of the deaf on the assist team be called a teacher of the deaf, and someone who's an advisor on the
so
team?
part of what we don't know is going to happen over time is how these two roles might meld together. So at the moment we're calling them an assist team. They are all people that have had and are involved in deaf education, so they're all teachers of the deaf, and some of them are advisors on deaf children, and some of them have had further training as well. So there is a very, very collaborative team around that group of people, but we are calling them the assist team, but some will be doing 2 jobs. Some will be working as a resource teacher of the deaf and working with those students that don't have any other support.
Hi, well that's loud. I'm concerned about children who have unilateral profound hearing loss,
Yes.
or children with auditory neuropathy, dysynchrony, who don't necessarily have hearing aids.
Certainly.
And they've kind of been neglected by the Ministry of Education, especially in the ADHB region I've found. And I'm just hoping that in this new system, these children without hearing aids can still be given equal rights to children with hearing aids. And some of them might need FM systems, and it's very difficult to apply for funding for them. And I'm just hoping that you'll be able to include this in your new system.
Sure. I think what's in the past, we've had protocols that have been set up, especially around newborn hearing screening in terms of the students that are referred through to the Ministry of Education, and that hasn't. Has always been a different protocol for children with unilateral hearing loss or mild hearing loss. So, is that what you're? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So what we've done is, like as Jim said, this process is constantly under review. So as we've moved forward, it's taken us 3 years to get to where we are now before we do the final rollout, and we will continue to review it going forward. One of the things that we have seen is that obviously the numbers of students that AODCs or advisors on deaf children are working with has got smaller, which is what we wanted to happen, to allow them to work more with those families and more with those students, especially in the 0 to 3 years. That was one of our target areas. The next piece of work we're looking at is for those students with unilateral hearing loss and mild hearing loss, have we then allowed ourselves the capacity to do more work in that area? So all I can say at the moment is that's something that's very much in our thinking going forward, to look at those students and to see whether we can improve the services that we've provided in that area.
And one more thing, in the past our AODCs have done classroom assessments for us on any child with a hearing loss, not
Sure.
just those with hearing aids, and we've found that to be extremely valuable in how we go forward with our management of that child, and we really would like that service to continue, because at the moment it's stopped.
Sure. Well, hopefully it shouldn't have stopped, because we haven't asked for that to stop in year 1 to year 3, because the ministry still is responsible for those students year 1 to year 3, so I'm hoping that would continue. And Jim, for your?
Absolutely. We would prefer, or I would prefer, that we look at a student's needs in terms of their classroom acoustics, the environment that they're in. I was recently in with a kiddie that's got a unilateral hearing loss, fitted with a hearing aid, and the sound field system in the classroom that's not being utilised. So that's the sort of information that we need to connect with audiologists to make sure that the equipment that we're putting on kids supports their learning. So absolutely, very, very keen to continue with that work.
That's the question. My turn. Bill mentioned that occasionally an older child would pop up, but I just had a quick check. There's about 40 children aged 9+ who were notified last year in the new deafness notification report. And I just wanted to clarify the RTDs in the past have been school-based,
Yes.
whereas the AODCs have visited families at home and provided that kind of support. So I presume the assist team will still be school-based. So will the deaf education centres, will they have some kind of professional resource that will provide an alternative to that family support?
Absolutely, and I think if we only look at children in terms of their school environment, we'd probably be under-supporting them. So our focus is to connect with parents, absolutely, and schools. For those children that are newly diagnosed, we've got a package of information that we're developing now, and again, that's been developed with the advisors on deaf children that are in our current assist team, but also along with the Ministry of Education to make sure that we give the right sort of information and also connect with those families that are late diagnosis. So certainly we have considered it and we are working towards that.
This team would then deliver that package of information.
That's right, correct.
Can I just, you said 74 students had improved services based on, what improvements did you see? Can you just give us a clue?
It was really just connecting with those children over time. So what we saw in the Waikato area, there were a number of children that were transferred across from the ministry, and during that period of time, we picked up twice as many children again. So what was happening is that the ministry had been working with a select group of children. They were the children that were passed over, and as we were going through and doing that work, and also connecting with the resource teachers of the deaf that were out in the schools, we were finding more children that we could then go and connect with. And I guess we have that data. The audiologists have that data across the country. We have that data in the hearing aid checks, and I guess that when those pieces of data mix up, we'll know that we've come pretty close to having a comprehensive review or view of the kids with hearing aids within the country. And that's what we'd like to see. We'd like to see that we've got, we know who the kids are, and we know that the schools know that the children are in their schools, and if there's support required, we can provide that.
Jim, in my role at Kelston, I'm quite frequently, I would say, confronted by by teachers of the deaf who are very frustrated because they can't get the current audiological data on the students on their caseload.
Certainly.
And when I tried to intervene, people have used that as a reason not to give the information, the Sharing of Information Act, and also I was questioned on why they even needed that data, which I found completely stunning. So I guess it's more of a comment than a question, but I hope that there is work being done to ensure that the people who are seeing the students face-to-face actually understand their hearing losses and have a good relationship with the audiologists, with the students. Because it's not because the teachers of the deaf don't want it.
No. Thanks, Leslie. And I think we have, through this work, we've had already seen that there's a real positive relationship between the assist team and the audiologists. There are some areas across the country where the privacy systems can create a bit of a barrier at times, and I guess it's about looking at how we can overcome those barriers. But I'm sure that there are the systems and structures that we can put in place to make sure that those happen. So generally what we've seen, absolutely fantastic response from the audiologist to date. There's another question?
Thank you. The question is a multi-part one. Where do children with auditory processing difficulties fit into the scheme? Is there going to be any change in the contestability funding for assistive devices for children? And the final part is with the provision of assistive devices for those children who are lucky enough to receive the funding, what sort of audiological input is there into the selection and fitting of that equipment?
I can probably answer the first part for you. We come across children with auditory processing disorders that have a hearing loss. Those are the kids that we're working with currently. Part of our mandate is to only pick up those children that have got a peripheral hearing loss. So someone asked the question about unilateral hearing losses and mild hearing losses. That's certainly part of our work, but children that are specific to APD won't be coming across from the ministry to the assist team. So the rest of your question is directed towards Mark.
Sure. Yeah, just to recap, in terms of auditory processing disorder, that there's been no change in that service provision from the ministry. That still sits within the Ministry of Education, so it hasn't been part of this these changes in service provision. In terms of the other questions you ask, I'm probably not the best person to ask. I know there, because I'm not really part of that work within the ministry, I know there is a reference group that has been established, but to be honest, I'm not really sure what is happening in that area. So all I could do would be to give you my email address, and I can take that back to the ministry and get someone to contact you, or I could get your email address, and I can connect you up with someone in the ministry who will probably be Justine Simpson, who's the National Assistive Technology Coordinator. At the moment, as far as I am aware, the funding around assistive equipment, there hasn't been any change in relation, and certainly not in relation to this work. There has no implication on that funding. Hi.
Children that sort of, or families that disengage from the hearing aid fitting process. We have a few families at Starship who won't turn up to their appointments.
Sure.
And I just wondered, is there a set process that you have outlined that the advisors have to follow? Because I find that sometimes they're more inclined to just close the case, and I feel like those are the families that need
Sure.
more support and more help with engagement.
So these are families that are not turning up to appointments, is that? Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, our process is really to engage with those families to the best of our ability. So if that's not happening, it'd be good to know where that's happening so that we can follow up on that. But definitely, the whole idea of this process is to reduce barriers for families and to increase that engagement. I mean, some families, often the families that we really want to get to are the ones that are the most difficult for us to get to. So the same challenges that you probably face through audiology are the same challenges we face in terms of education. But it is something that we, would definitely follow up on. So would be happy to get any feedback from that from yourself. So yeah.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Just a quick question. Your comments on classrooms being chopped open and opened up to be open planning again. Is that a current theme that's ongoing through the ministry? What's our response to that?
Yeah, sure.
I'd love to see some audiologists get together and give some reports to the ministry in terms of what's happening. Great, Leslie. So if anybody's got other evidence, because I think it's a real concern, and I have seen it firsthand where it's not just kids with hearing loss that are disadvantaged, it's probably kids with typical hearing that are disadvantaged as well. I know certainly as a male, going into those areas, I find it very, very difficult to concentrate. So I think Audiological Society could do some work there. Paul?
We have already written a position statement which talks about classroom acoustics and children's access to the curriculum through being able to hear what's being said.
Right.
So, but in addition to what Leslie is doing, there is a position statement that we wrote quite a few months ago that's there as our view on what ought to be done.
So it'll be great to get something like that into one of the education magazines, just to highlight to principals when you're starting to pull down walls and you're starting to look at how things look. You need to have a bit of a think about.
The deaf education centres, the board needs to say something. They need to lead this charge.
All right.
We can talk.
We can talk. Thank you. I think we're getting waved at, so.